On this episode of History Hunters, Jeff, Sarah, and Aiden check out the Kennedy Space Center and revisit the rich and sometimes tragic history of the U.S. space program. On their last full day of their Florida summer vacation, Jeff and Sarah of History Hunters, along with Aiden, drop in for a visit to the Kennedy Space Center, home of the Apollo, Skylab, and Space Shuttle programs.
So we've just arrived at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida. We're taking the tour. It should be several hours long. We are parked in the Wally Schirra parking section. Wally Schirra was one of the original Mercury astronauts. Well, like every other tourist attraction in the world, there's a line.
Where do you get on the bus?
Are you excited? Why?
You're recording? Because he's not interested in space.
Because he's not? Are you?
Yes, I am.
A bus will take them on a tour of the various launch sites which sent crews to the moon.
Bus tour. AC bus in a sultry hot summer day here in Florida.
During this tour, you'll get a unique, behind-the-scenes look at how America wrote many significant chapters in human and robotic space history. Most recently, the Space Shuttle program that launched 135 missions culminated in the assembly of the International Space Station in low Earth orbit.
These launch pads were retooled for the shuttle missions. The large opening in the center is designed to allow the flames from the main engines to escape. The flames were funneled away from the craft after ignition. This launch tower is 350 feet tall. NASA's Massive Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, is one of the largest buildings in the world in terms of volume size. It was completed in 1966, originally to allow for the vertical assembly of the Saturn V rocket for the Apollo program.
Rocket-propelled spacecraft like the Shuttle are loaded into massive vehicles known as crawlers to roll to the launch pads from the large VAB.
Loaded crawlers, by the way, travel at speeds of ½ mile an hour. This gravel track, called the Crawlerway, is used to transport rockets from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pads, and uses river rock imported from Tennessee and Alabama that doesn't spark when rolled over. We're gonna go to the Saturn Visitor Center. We are at the Apollo Saturn Center here at the Kennedy Space Center, and we're going to check out Alan Shepard's original spacesuit. Oh, the humanity!
The crowd moves into a theater where a short video presentation details the history of the space program and its benefits to humanity.
We created new alloys, lighter and stronger than anything seen before. We designed communication systems that would be reliable over the vast distances.
In this multimedia feature, The Kennedy Space Center recreates for visitors what it was like to be in the Houston control room during the intense launching of Apollo missions.
20 seconds on aspects. We are still enrolled at this time. 13, 12, 11, 10.
This is the actual Saturn rocket, one of 5 left in the world. What a small piece of equipment.
It's massive. There's no way to capture the enormity of it.
This is what the astronauts wrote in on the way to the launch pad.
Takes it further, and then stage 2 falls off.
This is an actual stage 3 of the rocket, the Saturn rocket behind me. It's huge. I was 8 years old when Apollo 11 made it to the moon for the first time ever.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
I remember seeing the grainy ghost-like images of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on TV as they bounced around on the surface of the moon, where gravity is a sixth of the Earth.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over.
The crew spent 4 days getting to the moon, but only got to spend 21 and a half hours on its surface, 7 of which were spent sleeping. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong entered his permanent place in history when he stepped onto the moon and said,
"It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
We wouldn't have had a space program had it not been for the likes of Robert Goddard, who helped develop rocket technology. In 1920, the Smithsonian Institution published a paper written by Goddard in which he asserted that rockets could be sent to the moon. Skeptics thought the plan was absurd and mocked Goddard as Moon Man. Goddard eventually moved to New Mexico, where he could conduct his research in private. Dr. Goddard died in 1945, but was largely responsible for the dawning of the space age. German rocket scientist Werner von Braun further propelled the U.S. space program. As a young man, von Braun worked in Nazi Germany's rocket program and helped design the V-2 rocket during World War II. After the war, he was secretly moved to the United States with about 1,600 other German scientists, engineers, where he helped the U.S. Army on an intermediate-range ballistic missile program. Von Braun also developed the rockets that launched America's first space satellite, Explorer 1. His group was assimilated into NASA, where he served as the chief architect for the Saturn V Super Heavy Lift launch vehicle that propelled the Apollo spacecraft to the moon.
Space cowboy boots.
Eugene Cernan's spacesuit used in practice of walking on the moon during Apollo 17 is on display next to a copy of the lunar rover.
Exciting, huh?
It is.
Jeff and Sarah are fascinated to view the capsule which splashed down in the Pacific Ocean in 1971 to bring the Apollo 14 crew safely to Earth. As an autograph collector, Jeff was intrigued with the signature of James Lovell on his Command Service Module Rescue book for the failed Apollo 13. Equally fascinating is this moon rock displayed in lucite. This technologically primitive TV camera was used to broadcast video images back to Earth during the 1968 Apollo 7 space mission.
Always before, we've had to be content with merely listening to our astronauts during their flights. In Apollo 7, through the medium of television, we could actually see them in space for the first time and become better acquainted with weightless life aboard a spacecraft.
You're picking up, I can read it now, just a minute.
Astronaut Gene Cernan autographed this lunar module system checklist on display. This plaster sculpture is a cast of the hands of Apollo 11 crew members Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. The actual Apollo 14 spacesuit which Alan Shepard wore on the moon is on display, with moon dust still clinging to the legs and boots.
I got my penny.
Yep.
Squished.
Sheet of face, money, government property. This is whopping. If this were to fall on me, there might be some oil left. One big machine. NASA doesn't miss a beat. Just like Disney, they have you exit out the gift shop. You ever seen a silver-headed astronaut?
Built on a successful 50-year legacy of discovery and exploration, the John F. Kennedy Space Center, America's multi-user spaceport, is poised to serve as humankind's gateway to space.
For centuries, we've lifted our gaze to the nighttime sky, and we know that lost somewhere between immensity and eternity.
That is the next big one to go up, the Titus project. Did we say this was another tourist trap here in Florida?
This isn't a tourist trap because it's not junk. It's real stuff.
The right stuff, you might say. Try to find something to eat. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of crowded and hot.
Because we're hungry.
Watched an IMAX 3D movie of us going to Mars, which kind of blows my mind.
Well, it kind of runs through the history of the space exploration and then explains our new missions.
This photo decorates an outdoor lunch patio and shows former President Lyndon Johnson and Vice President Spiro Agnew watching the launch of Apollo 11, the first moon landing.
We're now going to check out what's called the Heroes and Legends exhibit here at the Kennedy Space Center, which was probably a tribute to the astronauts who were part of the early program.
Welcome to Heroes and Legends, featuring the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame.
Gordon Cooper spent 9 hours crammed inside the Sigma 7 capsule during the Mercury Atlas 8 mission on October 3, 1962. The craft orbited the Earth 6 times.
Gus Grissom and Alan Shepard. And there is John Glenn.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Godspeed, John Glenn.
I actually got to meet John Glenn in 1983. It was kind of cool. This collection of astronaut memorabilia must be worth millions of dollars. So 1 month before I was born, Gus Grissom was up in space in that spacesuit behind me.
Virgil Gus Grissom was the third human in space, the first being Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, and the second being American astronaut Alan Shepard.
This suit was used in July of 1961.
Frank Borman's football jersey and varsity letter are on display, as are trophies and high school memorabilia of Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon.
This is the exhibit that is a memorial to the 3 astronauts who died on the launch pad in 1967.
On January 27, 1967, NASA experienced its first loss of life. Preparing for the launch of Apollo 1 the following month, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were conducting a rehearsal in a capsule at Cape Kennedy. The crew was doomed when a fire broke out in the oxygen-filled cabin.
Next to the hatch is a redesigned hatch used successfully for the remaining Apollo missions.
Sarah's touching a moon rock.
It doesn't feel like much. It just kind of feels like
A rock.
no, like a piece of metal or a magnet or something.
John Glenn's pilot's helmet. Like Bob Crippen, Frank Borman, Michael Collins of Apollo 11, and Gerald Carr.
We were intrigued by the capsule of Gemini 9A, which splashed down in the Pacific Ocean in 1966. It safely brought Tom Stafford and Eugene Cernan back to Earth. The capsule withstood the 3,500 degree Fahrenheit temperatures of re-entry.
Oh, that's the damage from it, huh?
Yeah, they put a cover over it. There's a plastic cover over it.
We found out a little while ago that the actual Atlantis space shuttle is here, so we're going to check it out.
We found that out when they flew it across the country. You don't remember that?
It's probably air conditioned. Space shuttle inside, air conditioned building, I'm all for that.
Suddenly, before Jeff, Sarah, and Aiden was the space shuttle Atlantis, which flew into space 33 times between 1985 and retirement in 2011.
Well, the monster Atlantis is just hanging above my head. It's just awesome to see this incredible invention. What are you trying to do? Touch it?
I want to touch it.
Yeah, I think they put it out of the reach for that reason.
I wish they would. I hope they have an exhibit where you can feel what this feels like. Because it doesn't look like it would be fire retardant.
The two failed shuttle missions are represented in a sobering display of pieces of destroyed shuttle. On the morning of January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up 73 seconds into flight, killing all 7 crew members.
These are the 7 crew members of the doomed Challenger shuttle mission.
It was the most human lives lost in a single NASA accident. A sidewall of the Challenger hangs in the eerie, subdued glow of blue light.
Personal memorabilia of those killed in the Challenger explosion is displayed at Kennedy. This display highlights Krista McAuliffe, the first teacher in space. A photo of Dick Scobie with his children. A book on running which belonged to Michael Smith. A flight jacket and trophy of Ellison Onizuka. Personal belongings of Gregory Jarvis. The karate gi of Ronald McNair. Astronaut attire which belonged to Judy Resnick.
The cockpit windows of the Columbia are dressed in black recess. The Columbia was NASA's second horrific space shuttle disaster. During takeoff on February 1st, 2003, a piece of foam insulation broke free from the shuttle's main tank and struck the left wing. The damage was enough to spell disaster upon re-entry when hot gases passed into the wing structure and disintegrated. Wreckage from the shuttle was strewn over East Texas and western Louisiana.
Personal memorabilia of those killed in the Columbia shuttle explosion is displayed in the Forever Remembered exhibit at Kennedy. Belongings of Commander Rick Husband include his boots and Bible. These items belong to Columbia pilot William McCool. Others who perished in the Columbia flight were mission specialists Kalpana Chawla and Laurel Clark, payload commander Michael Anderson, payload specialist Ilan Ramon of the Israeli Space Agency, and astronaut and mission specialist David Brown.
Sarah tried her skills at a video simulation exercise to load the shuttle in position for a launch. Let's just say that Sarah needed a lot more training.
So tell us, how do astronauts go? Go.
I think, well, that's where you poop, but I think that's what you can.
That's what the men have to use, a little nozzle. Hopefully it doesn't glow. And then here's your switch, the flush. Marble outhouse. This shows how they actually got the space shuttle to fly on top of the transport aircraft.
On display at Kennedy is this original model of the prototype for the space shuttle created by spaceship engineer Dr. Maxine Fagit in 1969. Fagit was deeply involved in planning for the space shuttle and retired from NASA in 1981, following the second space shuttle mission. The Kennedy Space Center was fascinating for sure, but it was also tiring, and it was time to go.
I'm standing right here in the, what is this area called?
Rocket Garden.
Rocket Garden, in the shade.
Full of rockets.
Because it's really super hot and steamy.
Well, our tour is over. Our Kennedy Space Center experience is over.
Just gonna go on history.
And we are a couple of dollars shy here. I mean, this place is not. It's a tourist trap.
You want to come here during winter.
It is a tourist trap. Yeah, it's also pretty. Well, it's kind of a tourist trap because.
But a lot of the extra attractions are free. There are enhancements, but you could have experienced the shuttle launch for free. I experienced that little simulator for free. There was actually a bunch of simulators.
Playground.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to go into orbit, though. See.
Well,
Maybe
some people might think I'm in orbit.
apply to be an astronaut.
I don't think at my age it'll work.
Sparky Benziger.
Sparky Benziger does have a nice ring to it. Go with throttle up.